So today we're going to talk about chapter 7, which is reaching and responding. And I'm just going to walk through this and take questions as we go. I really like the fact that this is kind of, a place where we can come and ask questions as we go and discuss the topic. And, as long as for this portion, you're staying with the content and particularly with the current slide. And then after we will, I can open it up to some broader questions. All right. So we've got chapter 7, which is reaching and responding. And I know this sounds super simplistic, but if you can learn to reach well and you can learn to respond to your partner's reach as well, and vice versa, the rest truly will fall into place. And when I say fall into place, the relationship will be healthy. There is a difference between healthy and longevity. Some people, learn to reach and learn to respond, and for whatever good reason for them, they don't end up, staying together with each other, but they are at least able to separate from a place of health. So, virtually every interaction between partners, you know, is on some level reaching and responding. Um, and that might be very, very subconscious, but your nervous system knows when you're not being responded to. And so we have to assume that there is some sort of reach embedded in every interaction. Some of those reaches have more emotional meaning and more attachment meaning and more on the line, but they're always, reaching and responding. So a reach is, words or behaviors that are seeking connection from your partner. I need to, connect with you about something that happened with work. I need some physical connection. I need just to engage with you. I need some emotional help, whatever that is. What sexual in contact, sexual sex, let's just leave it at that. Affection, physical affection, words and behavior that are seeking to resolve some sort of issue, right? And or words or behavior that are seeking some sort of repair of something that went wrong in the past, recent or distant past. I think it's really helpful for people that are especially new to relationship work and not really kind of understanding how relationships work. And those, people who have had, not a lot of success in relationships or grew up in environments with that the relationships in their family weren't super successful, yet want to work on it. They need to be more intentional, especially at the beginning of their work. And so one of those ways of being more intentional, because this stuff isn't so intuitive if you haven't done it before or didn't grow up with it, is to be really clear. Maybe not every single time you reach out to your partner, that would get tiring. But if be really clear, like, I'm going to say this right now. And am I reaching for my partner? And what am I reaching for? Right? What am I hoping for in their response? And what is the emotional meaning of that response? So you're really clear about your intention instead of these dropped moments feeling kind of chaotic and not, you can't really understand what went wrong. And then sometimes before you reach, it might be a good idea to step back and say, well, is this a good time to reach? Is this a good time to bring up this past thing in the past, this past rupture, that something that happened this morning? Do we have the space to really work through it? Or maybe, because sometimes people will just impulsively bring things up. Or maybe is it a better time to say, hey, can we have a conversation later for 15 minutes? I just want to bring something up. Because timing is very, very important, and we'll talk more about that. Okay, what is a response? Well, a response is when your partner initiates some sort of engagement or interaction with you, and how are you going to meet them? Or, a non-response is also a response. All right, so I'll just go over some things to think about when you are initiating engagement slash reaching to your partner for some sort of interaction, connection, problem solving. So, one of the things that happens, especially with someone with an anxious attachment, is they're really afraid of not being heard. And that is because they have had repeated experiences in their life of not being heard, either, in that relationship, in their past relationships, in their childhood, and often all three. And so when people are afraid of not being heard and they're not super clear about what they're needing to begin with, what happens is they don't send clear reaches. And sometimes that looks like instead of being really clear about, here's what's going on and here's what I'm needing, it comes out as just sort of telling your partner what they're doing wrong or criticizing them or just telling them what they need to do differently or just trying to convince them how they think, how they should think or feel. There is an ask in all of those behaviors, and we need to figure out what the ask is instead of you never smile at me when you say goodbye, right? That's not you're giving them the idea of what you want by telling them what they're getting wrong. But first of all, they're gonna maybe not take that so well because they're gonna feel blamed. That's very different from, hey, I like to have a little connection when we separate in the morning. I know you're busy and you've got a lot on your mind. You're not doing anything wrong, but it would feel good for me to have a little smile. That would, help me feel more connected to you throughout the day. Would you be willing for us to try that? So focusing on yourself is not just ignoring anything that they're doing quote unquote wrong, because many times partners are doing things that aren't so helpful. It probably isn't so helpful to not smile at your partner before you leave for the day. But it means going into it from a place of here's what I'm needing and feeling instead of just your focus being exclusively on them and what they're getting wrong and what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And one way to really stay with a self focus and address a behavior is to share how you're impacted from a vulnerable place. Like I just said, when you leave and I don't get that smile, then I kind of feel alone or I feel sort of disconnected. And me, I like to go into my day feeling like our connection is there. It helps me feel strong throughout the day. And so, when I don't get that, it doesn't feel so good for me. Again, it's okay to be clear with your partner about what you're needing for them to do differently, but it does really need to come after you've delivered the self work and they've been able to take that in, right? So it's like, hey, here's what happens for me. Are you hearing me? Are you able to kind of take this in? And then when that's established, then we go into, and here's what would be helpful for you to do. And again, relationships have different levels of health. And some people in healthier relationships, this happens just super intuitively. This is just what they do. And some people who are really learning to do this work, they need a little more structure around these interactions. Okay, let's see. Let me make sure this question I'm reading is worked up. Well, I'll go ahead and answer this. It's not super related, but I'll go ahead. We're going to do a chapter on attachment injuries. There is no cutoff point. There's no statute of limitations on past ruptures. If the past rupture is important enough that it keeps coming back in your mind or you keep getting triggered by it, that's important enough to address. It doesn't mean that, once people learn how to heal these things, that it can be really amazing how fast we can actually get past things when we start talking about them in a healthy way. But yeah, I mean, there is no cutoff point. Now, something can happen to where a couple starts to get healthier and they stop repeating the same theme of whatever that wound was in the past, and that starts to just heal it on its own. We know that's happening though if that trigger, if that memory doesn't just keep coming back over and over again. If it does keep coming back over and over again, it will show up in cycles. It does need some sort of healing. I don't know exactly what that healing is. Sometimes there is self-healing around these wounds. And but most of the time we're going to need a, a healing conversation and maybe a few different healing conversations about that event for it to not keep coming up again and again and again. And when I say coming up, I mean coming up in a way that is causing the partner who experienced it to have distress and causing that distress to show up in negative cycles that now become relationship interactions between the two of them. And so, embedded in your question is why is your husband resistant? Probably he's resistant because he doesn't have a lot of hope that anything he does is going to actually get you through it. He doesn't know what to do in that place. He doesn't feel like there will be success in trying to talk about this. So we've got to figure out a way to do it with success. All right. So, what are some blocks to self focus? So, what might cause someone to have a hard time going into an interaction really focused on expressing themselves and what's going on with them first? Well, people who've not been heard historically are going to have a hard time. They're not, or they can assume that they're not going to be heard. Hey, this approach isn't going to help me be heard. Um, People who have a history of not being responded to. People who have a history of even when they are coming from a self-focused place, then it's not leading to these any changes that they're needing or any kind of deeper conversation about why the changes aren't happening, right? And then sometimes we're in relationships where the only thing our partner will hear is when we're telling them what they're doing wrong. And these are all blocks that and are going to create, you know, make it more difficult from partner A who's doing the reach to do that in a healthy way. So what happens then if there are these blocks? Well, we got to figure out the root of the block, right? We can't know what the block is without understanding what it is. I'm afraid I'm not going to be heard. We need to discover that block, we need to name it, and we need to work through it. So if you say, look, Julie, I want to do my best to reach my partner in the healthiest way possible. But what I've experienced over and over and over again is that when I come at it that way, I don't really end up feeling heard. My partner just ends up, turning my issue into their issue. And then the next thing you know, my needs aren't being met and I'm not meeting their needs because they're leaving my needs. And so that is a block that we need to name. And that's the conversation with your partner, which is, hey, look at what we're doing. I come to you with a need, then that turns into your need, and that's not working for us, right? So we got to figure something out. We need more structure here. We need to, if one of us is coming to the other with a concern, we're both responsible for delivering it in the healthy way possible, but we need to be able to really sit with and lean into each other's concerns before just kind of taking the mic and going into our own stuff. So again, there's different blocks around, the ability to show up as your best self. You got to figure out what they are, and then partners really have to come together and talk about that. And a good therapist, their job is to figure out what the blocks are to healthier communication. Um, and sometimes the blocks are rooted in repeated negative cycles, and sometimes the blocks are rooted in someone's own individual stuff. When I was growing up, if somebody came to you with a concern, that meant you were just bad and awful, and it was very shaming. And to stay safe, the only thing I knew how to do was just start bringing up their stuff, right? It's like, who's worse? And so that needs to be uncovered so we can figure out how it's blocking healthy communication, clean, free flow, direct communication. All right. Another way to bring up a concern or reach to your partner is using attachment language, right? And that means how are we kind of viewing the problem, right? How are we framing our partner? How are we framing the reason that we're coming to them? If they're getting messages that you're coming to them just because you randomly want to make them wrong, or you want to make them bad, or you want to let them know how much they're letting you down, or you're just trying to control them, or you don't care about your needs, they're going to have a very difficult time opening up and being responsive to that in a healthy way that feels good. And so, that's what negative cycles do, is they're sending messages like this, right? And so we need to reframe that as an attachment intention. This isn't just random. I'm not just trying to beat up on you. I'm actually trying to feel close to you. And I'm trying to help you feel close to me. That's really where my heart is. That's what attachment is. It's feeling safe and close. And that's what I'm going for here. Again, what are the blocks to coming at and approaching a reach with that mindset? Well, if you grew up in a home where your concerns were just chronically dealt with in critical and shaming ways, you might have no idea that reaching to someone is a way to actually feel safe and close with them. I need for these things to change so I can feel safe and close, or I need for us to be able to talk about this so I can feel safe and close. If you don't have that reference point, that's a good place to start. And then, of course, we have these chronic negative cycles between partners, which does start to make it look like we're enemies. If you're just trying to make me wrong, then I'm going to react to that by making you wrong. And then that starts to become the narrative of the relationship. And we need to get out of that narrative and into this narrative, which is we're just trying to reach each other. And all these behaviors and all these bad words are desperate attempts to reach safety and closeness with each other. One thing people kind of get stuck in is, let me check questions here. One thing people kind of get stuck in is trying to control an interaction for getting the immediate the response they're looking for. And then not only does that kind of interfere with the way they're delivering information, but it also can leave them feeling like hopeless if they don't immediately get the response they're looking for, or hopeless and say, well, that didn't work and never try it again. These kinds of shifts, they take time. It does take time for these things to start taking effect. Sometimes we do get a positive response right then and there, and maybe more so than you would expect. But sometimes our partner, we deliver things in the most perfect way possible. And for whatever reason, our partner isn't able to respond to that positively right then and there. It's never a good idea to give up. Yes, at some point, some relationships do need to be given up on, but never right when you start doing new things and you're not getting that instant feedback. So, the overriding goal is to be your best self, right? In spite of the immediate response you're getting from your partner. What is your best self? Well, it's a lot of different things. I mean, but that's the overriding goal. And one of the best self things is being really clear and intentional with your own communication. You want to move away from, I'm trying to get this new response right here, in this instant moment, to I'm trying to improve the relationship health here, right? Maybe it's not going to happen right now, but my real goal is to improve the relationship in the big picture. One of the reasons why our new moves don't land immediately, and also this goes for, when your partner reaches to you. I'm always not just speaking from you to them, I'm also speaking of them to you. One of the reasons why you might not be responsive to your partner's new move, or they might not be responsive to yours, is because the nervous systems don't always trust new things, right? And for many different reasons. And sometimes there have been so much stuff in the relationship or their past that have led them to not really trust that this is real, or not really trust the intentions. And so the only way that, nervous systems really, really trust is repeated interactions over the course of time. So consistency. And then the other side to that, well, look, if a lot of time goes by, and you're not seeing any results at all, that's a new conversation. But it still means that you're not in every given interaction just quote unquote saying the right thing to get this good response. Okay, sometimes partners, when they're reaching for their partner, we need to make sure that their responsiveness isn't that they necessarily agree with you or agree with your perspective. That, agreement isn't a necessary part of a healthy response. Sometimes it's great when our partners agree with us, right? But that's not always going to happen. It's not possible. The healthiest relationship partners are going to not always see eye to eye about certain things. Sometimes, it's not so much that partners are so far away from each other on how they see something. Sometimes negative cycles can actually create kind of fake disagreement, which is not being able to be open to the other person's, point of view, a lack of flexibility, sort of doubling down on your own perspective, which are all not so much about what you really believe, if you really started to kind of come together and explore yourself, but they're due to just actual unmet relationship needs that you're fighting for when you think you're fighting for your opinion. And sometimes that's not true. Sometimes your opinion is your opinion, it's real, you're not able to be flexible. But what I have found over and over again is that when couples start stabilizing their cycles and the way they're talking to each other, a lot of times they do find that they're closer than they on issues than they think that they were at first. And then of course, you know, we don't need for, we don't want to have the expectation that our partner is going to agree with us over every single little thing. But we still need to have space to present our argument to them. And so once the emotional safety is established, we're hearing each other, we're open to each other, we're open to understanding each other. Then that's the point at which, okay, we're safe here. So now let's talk about, well, I want to hear what your argument is, and here's what my argument is. Okay, now sometimes couples really get stuck in details when really the issue transcends the details. It's about a bigger meaning. So, an example is one partner is telling the other partner they're not pulling their weight around the house, right? And so the second partner responds with, I don't know what you're talking about. I cook dinner 3 times a week, 3 times this week. I did this, I cleaned out the garage, I vacuumed, I picked the kids up. Well, here's all the ways I help and contribute, right? And so then the first partner comes back and, well, I made dinner 4 times in the week and this and that. And then they just get stuck arguing about the facts, which the facts are important, right? But if we got to do something before we get to those facts, which is appreciate the bigger meaning, okay? And that is really kind of trying to dive in and go, maybe my partner isn't just crazy. Maybe they are truly feeling overwhelmed and unsupported. Is there any truth to what they're saying? Maybe I don't agree with the number of times that XYZ happened, but is there any truth to maybe that they're truly feeling under overwhelmed and unsupported? And if that is true, what might my contribution to that be? And what might their contribution to their feeling overwhelmed and unsupported be? It's just kind of stepping back and looking at bigger picture meanings here and having that conversation. And then, the other partner's job here would be, somehow my partner is feeling unseen when I bring this up to them, that they're not pulling their weight. They're feeling unseen about what they do contribute. Is there any truth to that, that maybe they are? There is some truth to maybe I'm not seeing everything. And if so, what is my contribution to that and what is theirs? And just by getting in that frame of mind, you're going to be far more likely to reach and respond to each other in a healthy way. All right, so much about reaching and responding is about timing when you bring things up, right? And timing and structuring the roles of each partner. Okay. So the standard rule is that if one partner is reaching, we stick with that. That partner is in the attachment needing role. They're needing a response. They're needing to know you're going to respond, that we're going to be able to address this problem, that they're going to be heard, that they're somehow going to get connection, maybe not right then and there, but they're going to get a clear response. And the other partner is in the attachment giving role. Their role is to somehow respond. It doesn't mean I'm going to do exactly what you want right here and now in this moment, but it does mean that I'm willing um, to give you a clear idea of when, right? Or what I can do or when I can do it. And this, ideally, we're able to stay in this for an hour or more, and then we switch to if the other partner has something to bring up because we want to know, partners really need to know I can bring something up and I can reach, and it's going to be heard, it's going to be held, it's going to be responded to without it going into your stuff or just getting ignored. So timing is about when we bring things up and how we who has the mic, who has the floor in that interaction. And it never is about only one partner's needs matter. It's just about we're going to take turns. That's part of structuring your communication in healthy ways, especially, some partners, they just already do that. They don't, for whatever reason, they've worked on their relationship. They just have a healthier relationship in general. Some partners who are really new to this work, they really need to intentionally be structuring. All right. So if you're the partner who is in the listening role, and you're needing to respond to your partner's reach, what is your work here? Well, you're responsible for really recognizing their reach as a reach. Sometimes it's easy, your partner says something and it's easy to just kind of ignore it, blow it off. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, whatever. And maybe it is a really big deal to them. And you need to figure out what's going on with this? What are they trying to say to me? What are they needing from me? Every single interaction? No. I mean, the goal is to get to the point where this just sort of flows and partners can just sometimes say, "Hey, look, it's raining outside." And the other partner, might be in their own head and not exactly say something. But we do need to be really intentional because a lot of times a partner is reaching and we need to recognize that and be open to giving them some sort of response. And so you need to make sure that you're, especially like if this is something significant, right? Like they're wanting a connection from you or they're wanting to resolve a problem. You got to first kind of make sure that you're going to be able to be open to what they're bringing to you. If the timing's off, if it's not the right environment, if it's not you're tired, you just don't have the capacity to give the conversation the attention it deserves, then that's okay. It's just a matter of saying, "Hey, this isn't the right time. Here's when we can come back to it. Let's wake up early and have coffee together and address this then." That is a response. And again, couples who are really in distress and new to relationship work are going to need to be really more clear about this. You really need to heavily lean into your partner's feelings and make a concerted effort to find the truth in what they're saying or kernels of truth instead of just immediately going into how am I going to refute this? Lean into what's the truth in what they're saying here. Because there's almost always some truth to someone's concern. Repeat back to them what they're saying to you and ask for clarity. Okay, here's what I'm hearing you saying. Am I getting it right? Give them an opportunity to clarify if you're, misunderstanding or whatever. Validate their feelings. I talk about that over and over and over. I can see why that's frustrating for you. Doesn't mean you're taking responsibility necessarily for doing what they're saying you're doing or doing what they're saying you're doing intentionally, but you're able to recognize that regardless, they're in a frustrated place. And then again, some sort of response, either right then, okay, you know what, or later. You know what, listen, I've taken it in. You have a lot of important things to say. I really feel like I've heard you. Let me just take some time with this. This is kind of new to us, so let me just take some time to this before I give you a response. And of course, some conversations lend themselves more to needing time to process than others. All right, so homework for you is to really think about the last time you and your partner were in a negative cycle and try to pinpoint, was there some sort of reach where one partner initiated an interaction, even if it's hard to see that reach, where there was some, we can get to some clarity around what that partner was hoping to get in return. Okay. And what was the reach and what was the second partner's response to the reach? And then when you figure that out, in the service of avoiding negative cycles in the future, see how you might both improve that. How might have brought that up? How might I have initiated that conversation in a new way that maybe made it less likely to go into a negative cycle? And how might the responding partner improve their response um, in a way that it lessened the odds that it would go into a negative cycle? All right, so we'll go ahead and stop there. And it looks like I think I saw someone had a raised hand. All right, well,
There we go. Hi.
there you go. Hi, how are you?
Not well, but I'm happy to be here.
Okay, good. I'm sorry you're
Um,
not well though, but I'm glad you're happy to be here.
Thank you. I missed this chapter this week, so I'm a little
Okay,
behind. But I was wondering whether it's a question for this or maybe for a future week, depending on which chapter it kind of goes with.
okay,
I'm more the anxious attachment style. He's avoidant.
okay.
I've done a ton of personal work since
Yeah,
my teens.
okay,
He's turning 45 and really hasn't done any.
okay,
We have a very big conflict in our relationship actively that we're working on in couples therapy.
okay.
And it almost feels as though there's no way for me to receive any support from him because he's so shut down.
Hmm.
I'm wondering when you have someone like that, where maybe I think it's possible that someone just doesn't have the capability to show up because
Hmm.
they're so shut down.
Yeah,
Is there any recommendation? Like, my guess is that one-on-one work and me kind of just sitting in the background waiting is the only route to go. But then also, I have to take care of myself in the process.
yeah. Um, okay, so first of all, from my perspective, it is usually 100% can't,
Okay.
not want.
Right.
And even if there is some not want elements, the not want is related to can't,
I
right?
agree.
It's like I'm
Yeah.
so scared and yeah, I'm resisting it, but the fear
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
rooted in not knowing how to deal with what's going to come up. And if I did know how to deal with it, then I wouldn't be so scared of it, right?
Yeah.
So now, then we have to look at the other piece of it, which is if, regardless of the really good reasons that he's not able to show up, you're still impacted by that
Yeah.
negatively. And it's getting in the way of your ability to feel safe and close in the relationship and to resolve problems like whatever this, I don't know if this conflict is a surface level thing, but regardless, the
Deep.
biggest conflict is the fact that you can't reach each other emotionally.
Yeah.
And that gets in the way of being able to work through whatever this problem is. And if this problem gets resolved somehow, if we don't deal with the root, it's going to keep showing up in other problems, which I'm sure you probably already know.
Yeah.
Um, and so now we have to figure out, well, now what do we do to get this figured out to where he is, one, um, open to the idea of doing the work that will get him able to do the work because there is a difference between can't and won't
Hmm.
when it comes committing to doing the work to get there, right? Some
Right.
people, so we need to get really clear, like, is he wanting? Does he see the value in opening up?
Right.
And if he doesn't see the value and he's resisting doing that work, then there, we need to understand why, what's the very good reason he's resisting it, but he also needs to understand, like, okay, you have some good reasons here for not wanting to really actively participate in this, but you do need to understand the consequences. And the
Yeah.
consequences are um, loss of the relationship, possibly an unhappy partner. He stays unhappy and then just like getting stuck continuously in negative cycles, right?
Right.
So we got to, my job when I'm working with the couples to give really compelling reasons to do the work.
Okay.
Um, So then, what is the work? Well, now we have to figure out what are the actual blocks to his ability to show up. Like people
Mhm.
have different blocks. I mean, with an avoidant attachment, he's going to have blocks that are pretty common for all people with avoidant attachment, but they'll have their own unique flavors. And some blocks are more similar for some avoidants than others, are more common and avoidant. But there's usually a big umbrella, which you've read in the book.
Mhm.
And we got to now find someone who's capable of helping him work through those blocks,
Yeah.
right? We need to understand one, how are these blocks showing up in the cycle? How's the shutdown showing up in the cycle? What's the impact of it? What are the very good reasons that whatever these cycle behaviors are helping him regulate the emotions that he's not in touch with? So if
Mhm.
he's trying to regulate you in the way he regulates him,
Yeah.
right, which is just shut it all down, and then confused as to why that's not getting him the result with you that he can temporarily escape his own feelings. And obviously that doesn't work for you because it's not regulating for either of you.
Right.
And so we need to find someone capable of doing that work. And I personally would rather a couple do the work together because I'm doing that work, right? I'm
Mhm.
doing is 50% of what I do is individual work. I just weave it at the end back into the relationship. I figure out how are these individual issues showing up as relationship symptoms,
Mhm.
work on that. And then I work on to process like what did you bring to the table here before your partner you even met your partner, and then I work on how can we stabilize the relationship to where we're not continuing to reinforce all these things that were there to begin with. So
Right.
that's neither here nor there, but well, it is here because you said, does this mean individual work? So it could. It doesn't have to though. If
Right.
you can find someone, especially I'm biased towards the type of work that I do, which is called emotionally focused therapy for couples. And someone who does that work, they know going into it, like we're not doing the work if we're not helping the avoidant partner engage.
Yeah.
And then I'm also going to, that person is going to need to be able to understand how are you contributing to his problem, right?
Mhm.
And how is he contributing to your problem
Right.
in the cycle? So, let's say that's not possible, then another option would be for him to see a therapist who does help him get emotionally engaged with himself.
Mhm.
And that could be, the type of work I do, emotionally focused therapy. They have an individual model,
Mhm.
or just talking to different therapists and see who has a lot of experience in helping people emotionally engage with self. But that word engagement is kind of vague. Emotional engagement with self is how do I engage with my emotional self? Do I feel my emotions? Do I
Mhm.
put words to my emotions? Do I understand how my emotions are attached to my behaviors? Do I understand the origin of some of my emotions? And so anyway, that really truly has to happen if the relationship is going to be healthy and you're going to be okay, right? And feel safe
Yeah.
and close. Will it happen because of therapy right now that he's getting, or will it happen because of years of, reading and growing gradually? Will it happen because right now he's not in the right, it's not the right timing, it's not the right place in his life, and like ten years from now, 6 months from now, he decides, oh my gosh, I do want to do this work. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I do know because people have all sorts of ways of getting from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
And so, but one thing I will say, in of course, my way of getting there, the most efficient way is what I just described, which is get an EFT therapist, and he needs to get engaged and blah, blah, blah. And, but people do, people have all sorts of ways of getting there through that journey that aren't exactly how I describe. And then some people have all sorts of ways of growing together in ways, even though it's not super perfect. And, so I hope
Yeah.
that helps.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely.
At
Thank
least
you.
validate your experience. So,
Mhm.
okay.
Thank you.
Um, okay. You're very welcome. I thought I saw Susan's hand raised, but maybe not. All right. Does anybody have any questions for me about chapter 7? Okay. Subui, go ahead.
Hello,
Hi, Subui. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Uh, just trying to put my video up. Okay,
There
hi.
you go. Hi.
Okay. One specific question I actually had, it was on a couple of the slides. Um, but what is the difference between, or how can you tell when you're convincing someone,
Mm-hmm.
to, I guess like respond to what you need,
Mm-hmm.
versus like controlling or like almost like in a way, I guess, manipulating them in order for them to validate you or
Mm-hmm.
to see things the way only you see it. Like, how can you kind of see the difference in that?
Well, some of the differences you're going to find in a feeling of fear or anxiety. That's always a good sign. If you're going into a situation with a lot of fear and anxiety, there's a really good chance that that's going to go south. And I don't mean some fear and anxiety. I mean if you're like feeling kind of angsty, that's a good indication that you might be rigidly needing some certain response for them in order to feel safe, as opposed to kind of dealing with some of that fear on your own, figuring out what's going on with that before initiating the conversation, and then going to it with more openness. Like this is a chance to kind of open up this conversation for me to kind of share where I'm coming from and for me to really be open to where they're coming from instead of I have to have this exact response or I'm not going to be okay. I know that it's tricky because there is a really fine line there, but
Hmm.
I think one good question is, am I open to what they have to say? If I'm not going into this with some openness to them, then I'm probably going to fall back into just trying to convince them and trying to kind of, you know, be so kind of controlling about their response that I'm not able to hear them. And then the question is, what's causing me to not have openness to what they have to say?
Okay.
And then sometimes, when people are new to this, it's like, I'm going to start this conversation by going in with openness and see if that later creates a new conversation where we are able to kind of dive into the topic a little more directly.
Okay. And as far as like adapting that, I guess like thinkability, how do you like, again, I'm in this book club, and I'm single.
Okay.
I am like in that place where I'm not like rejecting dating completely, but I have been meeting people, I'm connecting with people,
Okay.
but I think I hesitate of jumping into anything because I truly believe I have some work to do on my own before I can really show up for a partner. I know how
Sure.
I've done it in the past and I don't want to
Yeah.
repeat that cycle.
Okay.
And a lot of it is just like I know like a lot of our example, it does again, this is a lot of, you're a couples therapist, this is your
Sure.
specialty and everything. But I think I sometimes having a difficult time sometimes with taking this information in, but it's like, how do I do this while not being in an actual
Yeah.
like relationship? And I also don't want to like deter myself where I'm like, oh, everything I do, I have so much to work on. There's always something I'm gonna have to work
Yeah.
on. And even like you mentioned too in these slides about self-focus, and even a lot of it's like, oh, do I have to work on something or do it? And I
Hmm.
think I tend to gravitate towards doing that because I'm like, okay, I'm doing all this work, but
Yeah.
the real the real test is when you're, doing that with any relationship you're in. And I think I'm taking a lot of uh your tips and like how to navigate in all my relationships. Uh,
Sure.
I'm not just trying to prioritize, oh, once a romantic partner comes in my life. I think I see my friends, my family, my chosen people in my
Mhm.
life as I prioritize all this relationship because I feel like it's a domino effect. Uh,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I guess like a lot of things that you do mention, like I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how I do this with my dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I know how this is repeated with my friend. So do you feel like um like even some of these things that we're talking about, like how do I make sure that I'm not just thinking it's only my relationship with myself
Mhm.
versus my relationship with other people in my life?
Yeah, I mean, any relationship is going to give you opportunities to be triggered and deal with your trigger, right? Any relationship. So you just always want to work on that trigger, whether it's with your dad or a coworker or even if, future partner. You want to be able to work on that trigger with your own self. Like what's coming up in me around this trigger, right?
Mm,
Why am I why am I feeling like that statement that my dad just said? Like what's going on that didn't hit me well? What's the message I was getting from my dad? What anxiety is coming up from me? Is that taking me to like kind of a sad place? Is that reminding me of some pain I've experienced? And then the $1 million question is, how do I want to deal with that trigger? Like, what's my urge? Is my urge to just hang up on him and stop talking to him for 2 weeks, which is not so healthy? Is my urge to try to, you know, get him to have a conversation with me about our feelings when I know he's not really capable of going there? Or is my urge to, you know, just kind of assertively say, hey, Dad, I'm being a little confusing because there's different ways to respond to different situations. But the
yeah.
point is to make sure that you're really clear about how you're going to respond to your trigger. Um,
And do you think that like I'm someone, I over communicate, you can say.
mhm,
Even though most people say like I overshare. I'm like, I'd rather tell you everything than, leave out parts.
sure.
But I'm it's like I like I said, part of the self work is reflecting on that, right? Answering those
Mhm.
questions, which I already do and I'm just trying to do
Yeah.
better at.
Yeah.
But is it healthy for me to, let's say, like you said, like my dad, if I'm like, hey dad, I'm getting very triggered right now when you do this. It makes me feel like I'm still that little girl that I'm
Mhm.
not taken seriously. And it's like, even if he may not understand my language or what I'm feeling, is it healthy for me to even say those things, communicate those
I
things?
mean, yeah, I would say for that, yeah, I think that is healthier than probably what you have been doing, which I don't know what that is. I mean, if
Like
you have,
shutting down, kind of
yeah,
like,
I
yeah,
would try. I think that's a healthier approach, right? I think if you have a dad who's going to start screaming at you and telling you you're a bad daughter and you're reasonably certain that will happen, then you might have to step back and go, you know what? I'm going to be clear about how this is triggering me, but it might not be safe to say that to my dad. So
gotcha.
there's not so much of a black and white clear cut answer. What needs to be clear is the intention, the hope, how safe it is for the given situation. Your dad doesn't sound like a super unreasonable person. So even if he can't fully understand what you're saying, I think it's healthy for you to start that conversation because at least you're planting seeds of something new. And,
Gotcha.
when you say I overshare, well, that really needs to be looked at. I mean, first of all, does that oversharing have a downside? If it doesn't have a downside, don't bother. It's fine. That's just who you are. But if you're able to say, look, sometimes I overshare and I regret that, or sometimes maybe I do cross a line where I end up feeling, vulnerable or whatever the downside to oversharing might be. And if you determine, yeah, maybe I want to pull back on that a little bit, then you need to
Gotcha.
understand why you're oversharing. What are you hoping for? How does it, because what happens usually if it's oversharing that's kind of not so healthy and defensive, like meaning not wanting to feel, then you're going to notice that you get triggered into oversharing. So some trigger comes along and then you overshare and it happens so fast you don't even think about it. And so
Hmm.
we need to figure out what happens in that space. Some people overshare because they feel like, well, if they I'm going to give them all the information because they're probably going to reject me anyway. And if they have all the information, then maybe I don't have to wait for them to reject me. We'll just get it all out right then and there. Something like that. That's
No, that's exactly. And
okay.
like one of my things that I say is I'd rather be rejected than my time wasted. And I just like, I'm someone like, here's my full story.
Yeah.
Is any of this bothers you? Tell me now,
Yeah.
so we can avoid doing that work we will
Yeah.
eventually have to do
There
regardless.
you go. So you need to figure out like what's the fear. And first of all, like I know that there's truth to the fact that we don't want to waste our time, but there's also truth to the fact that we have to risk wasting our time because it's the only real way to get to know someone. And if you present this kind of bad information about yourself out of context when they haven't gotten to know all the wonderful things about you, then all of a sudden you're throwing this stuff at them that's out of context that's overwhelming. So, and it's not fair to you as a whole person, right?
Yeah,
So that's why we need to have like we need to let relationships build safety and build getting to know each other and knowing the good parts of each other before we start, um, throwing it all out there.
absolutely. Because then it will
Yeah,
prevent me from thinking every relationship is going to be the same. So
totally.
I
Yeah.
got you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Julie.
You're welcome. And just to circle back, any relationship work you're doing with your dad, like with your coworker, it's all going to be beneficial to being in a relationship with a future partner. It's just some of
Absolutely.
the things that are unique to partnerships you're not going to have dealt with, but you'll be really good at understanding yourself and communicating more clearly. So,
Absolutely. Thank
all
you.
right, you're welcome. Okay, let's go to Doug.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
Hi, Doug. I'm good. How are you?
Great, thanks. Hey, really appreciate your book and listen to all your podcasts and led us
Awesome.
led us to getting an EFT therapist. And
Great.
one of the things that I'm having trouble with is needing an apology after a negative cycle.
Okay.
And like I'm 51 and I never got apologies as a kid, so it's
Mhm.
really important to me. And it's like my partner needs like a day or so to get over the negative cycle, and I'm usually over it within 5 minutes and want to start the apology process.
Mhm. Okay.
And so
Yeah.
usually I bring up, the next day, hey, this is a need, and it still spins out and doesn't go well. Like we have
Mhm.
two negative cycles out of the one.
Okay. What is um what does that apology mean to you?
It means they're taking responsibility for their 50%.
Okay. And why are they resistant to the apology?
I think because uh, they're saying like I really need to like it takes them a long time to come down from the heightened, like often this comes about from a negative cycle that's intense. Like these aren't our little snippy things. This is like, you know, s- everybody gets amped up. I mean, there's three of us with a 7-year-old, all have ADHD, and we can
Mhm.
all get, amped. And um, so usually she needs a time to kind of either process it internally. And so she's an internal processor. I'm an
Mhm.
external processor. And um, what helps me, like, for example, is like, I often say, you know, the other person could have been quote unquote, wrong, but I could have been a jerk. So I'm apologizing for being a jerk or
Mhm.
raising my voice. And it helps me to just like, so it's for me, it's the de-escalation. Like I think what the sorry starts the de-escalation for me. And without it, we're still hanging and I'm still feeling some like anxiety around it.
Okay. Are they not is your partner not apologizing? She is your partner? She.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is your partner not apologizing because she truly doesn't feel like she's responsible? Because if that's the case, then that is, something that needs to be addressed. If there's, I guess I would need to know
Mm.
her block to the apology. Like if she truly doesn't take responsibility or apologizing is like kind of like humiliating, or does apologizing for her mean that she's taking all the blame? Or does it leave her feeling unseen, unheard? That I think is the better conversation to have with her, which is, hey, here's what apologies mean to me, right? Just what you told me. I didn't get them growing up, and because I didn't get them, like nothing ever really shifted. And when I apologize, my heart is always in, hey, that helps me want to do better. But clearly, apologies have some sort of different meaning to you. What is the meaning to you?
Yeah, like to answer your question, I think it's like for her to have a genuine apology, like she needs to really feel like I sense sometimes that there's like I've felt this for a long time that there's you know we each have to take one of our therapists said you each have to take 100% responsibility for your 50%, and whether that's just how you responded, like you always say, the negative cycles about connection. And
Yeah.
like, I feel like I learned a lot. I got a lot today from what you were saying about, today I had bad timing, and I kind of went to say about what I need. And I get pushback and pushback and pushback. And so, I often come in with like, hey, I'm really sorry. And I'm
Mhm.
also trying really hard to not have the but. Like, I didn't and I heard somebody say this well, like for Gen Xers, validation and empathy that just didn't exist when we were kids. Like, it wasn't
Mhm.
just our parents. Somebody said it well to me, like the schools didn't have that, right? So
Yeah, no.
I actually let my parents off the hook a little bit last week when I was like, oh, it's not just my folks. It's like that was a societal
Yeah.
thing. So, validating, I just feel like if we can each validate what what's like, yeah, hey, I hear
Yeah.
that, I'm sorry I said this, like it just seems to take the temperature down, and it allows me to then make that step forward, because um y- there, whether it's not in the negative cycles, like I feel like I've been reading, each partner has a little role to play often in the pinch, right?
Absolutely. I mean, some roles can be more destructive than others. Like if your role is bringing something up in a really horrible way and like snarky, let's just say snarky way, and their role is, throwing a plate at you. Obviously, their role is way more destructive than your role, but you both, just kind of like thematically are doing something that's not healthy. And so I would, there's so many layers here. The first thing I would want to know, because I do think apologies are healthy. I think we can't, and you probably read this in the book, like they don't work as an isolated way to address something in isolation. We need to have other things going on with the apologies, because for some people it's like, I'm sorry, they're not really addressing any of the other emotional support, validation, getting to the root of the problem. Um,
I
but
think that's it for her. So, Julie, sorry to interrupt.
that's
I'm pretty
okay.
sure that's it for her. She needs to have the secondary piece,
Got
and
it.
she's not
Okay.
ready for the secondary piece for a while. And I'm right there. I'm like, okay, yeah, I was a dick. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done that yet. I don't really agree with what you're saying, but I wasn't really nice about it. So I apologize for it. Does that
Okay,
make sense?
here's your work. I'm just going to give you this. Here's your work. Your work is to get curious with her. And
Okay.
your work is, instead of going into apology, I want you to lean into, how did this impact you? Right? What did not feel good about this for you? You might say, look, I'm sorry for my part, but right now, instead of me focusing on me being sorry, I want to focus on how you were impacted. And then at some point you need to be like, what is it about, I'm really starting to think about this whole concept of apologizing, and here's what it means to me, but I'm curious, like, what is the meaning? What is kind of, when you think about apologizing and I'm coming to you, like, what are you hearing? What's the meaning? And see if you can get her putting words to that resistance, and then validating that and being like, look, okay, that makes sense to me. If that's how I associated apologies, I probably wouldn't want to go there either. If she's going to start apologizing, that's the first conversation to have. That is getting it out in the open, like exploring each other. People are much more open to, doing what you want and, responding to you in the way you're hoping for, when they feel heard and understood. And so, like I said a minute ago, sometimes there's a fake disagreement about something, and there's probably a fake disagreement here about apologizing. It's just we don't know yet what the meanings are. And if we can try to meet each other and create some emotional safety around the whole topic, it's likely that it will start to work itself out.
It's interesting you say that, and I think my work at this point is like, I love the be curious part, and I mean, I'm also training to be a coach, so I get the reflective inquiry and all that, but it's just so hard
I know it's so
when,
hard. Yeah.
dude, right when you're triggered by your
Yeah.
partner, you're just so like, I'm often looking for like the Jedi mind trick or whatever it is to like, okay, be curious. you know, how do I get into the be curious when I'm feeling triggered? Like, I don't know what to do, but it's
You
somehow.
gotta, it takes some work. I mean, actually that course I have been talking about is it out? Katrina, sorry, I'm plugging my computer in.
Yes, it is. It just
Okay. So there's an anxious attachment self-work course. It's out, it's hours long. How many hours is it, do you think, Katrina, all said and done?
I I mean, people are probably, I think video content wise, it's like 3 hours, but people are going to have a lot of reflecting to do, and it could.
Okay, so it basically tries to really walk you through these triggers. And so, I kind of start it with like, okay, you're going to have to come up with a trigger for each of these exercises. And then the exercises progress and go deeper, deeper, deeper. And a trigger for you could be, I have a really hard time getting into curiosity, right? And so then the exercises are designed to help you kind of pinpoint all the feelings that are underneath that resistance, that inability, the fears. When I try to pick them apart. Okay, right now we're going to just work on the fear part. Right now we're going to just work on the shame part or whatever. And so that's going to help you like get a little more clear about what's so scary about leaning, because that's what it is. It's a fear.
Yeah.
On my
Yeah.
needs are not going to matter. And then I just get really like, okay, you're scared this, you're scared. What if? How are you going to feel? How are you going to feel? And really be able to kind of sit with the deeper, there's stuff in there. There's unexpressed grief. There's all sorts of stuff in there that needs some help.
Sure.
Once it gets some help, it's going to be much easier for you to not have it sort of driving the car and creating these blocks to really being curious and hearing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's it? And so what's it called? It's on your website?
I don't even know what's it called. All I know is I created it. Is it called Anxious?
It's called the Anxious Self-Work course.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that is really meant to help people understand these personal blocks to their work on the side of the relationship, not at the expense of their partner's work, but yeah. So
Oh,
okay.
no, totally. I love it. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. All right, let's go to Irene. Hi, Irene. I can't hear you, but I can see you. Okay. If you go, I think bottom left, you should find okay, while you do that,
Okay,
oh no,
can
you're here.
you hear
Okay.
me?
I can, yes. Oh, I think I lost you again.
Tap to speak.
There you go.
Okay, so now I tap to speak, and if I switch to the screen, will it disappear?
It looks like you're
Tap to
either,
speak.
yeah.
All right, I have to keep it on this screen where
Yeah.
I can't look at you or myself or anything. So I'm just gonna,
Okay.
I guess if you can see me, then that's probably acceptable.
I'll just I just look at your picture and pretend you're talking. So
Oh,
I'm
so you don't
looking at
even have my picture, right? So I can
No,
I can
yeah, I
put my
do.
phone down.
Yeah.
I can put my phone down. All right.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what my question is. Maybe if I can reflect to you, you can give some feedback. So my husband is a pretty extreme dismissive avoidant.
Okay.
And I've just discovered that I am not an anxious, I am a fearful avoidant.
Okay.
And some of the things that I thought were good qualities, like, really intent upon communication, is actually like potentially dysfunctional. So I've been really taking advantage of the insights about my personality and really focusing on my own nervous system regulation.
Okay.
And also on being less attached. Every time we have a big blowout, I get less afraid of what's going to happen here in the end. Will I be okay if this blows up and I end up alone? And I've become more and more and more okay with that. And I'm sort of more in my power, and I'm less, I think, needy to him as a result of that.
Okay.
But we just had a 2-day thing that took place where I have to sort myself out here to just be really concise.
Okay.
So his ability to communicate is very minimal.
Okay.
He doesn't have the words, and I'm not sure really what the blocks are. But he'll like process something for months, and then I'll notice that there's a behavior change
Okay.
that relates to something I said.
Okay. That's That's promising, although it takes a while, but
It's something, yeah. And
yeah.
then, so we've been in this period where there was a really big, giant, awful thing that happened a few months ago, and he's been Mr. Perfect for like weeks now.
Okay.
And then he said something very minimally rude. It was actually, I said, hey, I'd like to talk to you. And I was like a really gentle, I put my hand on his shoulder. He asked me, how are you? I said, well, I'd like to talk about something with you. And he ignored me and didn't respond at all. And I took that as rude and ignorant.
Okay.
And so I pointed it out. And where I think, well, that's a really quick repair. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I didn't answer you. Or you're right. That was rude. I shouldn't have done that. I'm in a bad mood. I'm sorry. And that would have been the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, it turned into like a 36-hour process of him shutting down and just really withdrawing. And when I try to talk, it's just passive aggressive and hostile and, reverse blaming. And so I say, no, I'm not having this conversation. We're going to stay on the subject. We're not going to shift the way you always do in the past. We're not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I'm walking away. Let me know when you're able to talk. A whole 24 hours went by. We talked again the next morning. I guess, I think it's important to repair something. I think it's important to and I conveyed to him, I said, look, all I need is a 5 seconds of, you matter to me. It appears that I did something hurtful. It was unintentional, but I'm sorry because you matter to me.
Okay.
That's all I need. And I've given him the words, literally, like that's the language. That would be the simplest 5-second fix that you could do.
Have you
And
asked him why, like he might not know the answer, but have you tried to explore like what gets in the way of that? Like in a safe way? Like clearly something happens.
I don't think he knows because he really doesn't have access to his own feelings the way a dismissive avoidant doesn't have access or self-awareness of that kind.
Does he
And
have
so,
an awareness that he doesn't do it? Okay, do
well,
you agree? Do you agree
yeah,
on the problem? Okay.
I mean, I think that he would know that in 13 years, we've never had a freaking repair from a freaking argument.
Well, does he? Have you asked him? I'm curious if he has like said,
I
yeah,
don't,
it's true. I don't do that. I don't say those words. Like
well,
we have to-
I don't think that I could ask and get a direct answer because that's too confrontive and too vulnerable. There would be no way I could ask that question. But I can tell you that in the past, when I was ready to leave, I said, you need to read this book, and it's about conflict repair.
okay,
And at least you need to read the book, because if you're not even willing to read the book, it's completely and utterly hopeless. We can't
probably.
continue.
Yeah.
So it took him like 8 months to read the book.
Okay.
And his experience of the book is, I can't retain anything. It just kind of goes in and goes out. It's just not my, like, he's Mr. Spreadsheet, he can do spreadsheets and he can do science and math, but he can't do human relation information very easily. So the book was read, and that answers your question. I guess he understands either that he doesn't do repair, or maybe I need to read this book or else she'll leave me. I don't really know.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Are you miserable in the relationship?
When he's Mr. Perfect, it's very sweet, it's very lovely, it's very nice. I recognize the limitations to intimacy, and I've accepted that. And it's lovely. I only take offense when I feel like he's behaving rudely, disrespectfully, disapprovingly, being some kind of, mean.
All right. Well, there's two ways to go here. I think we
And so just to answer your question, when that happens, I have gone into extremely dark states of stress that are so bad that I think it shaves years off my life. And then, 2, 3 weeks, a month, 6 months, everything can be fine. So it's about how deeply I get triggered, whether I'm miserable. And so I've been working hard on my own self-regulation so that nothing can take me off of my center.
Okay, well, the work for you might now at this point be detaching from the expectations. It doesn't sound like he is in a place to give you what you're needing to feel
Even a
close.
conversation about something rude.
Well, I don't mean detach from healthy assertion of how you're impacted, but I think it might be healthy to detach from the expectation that he's going to be able to give you what he's clearly showing that he's not able to give you. Like there's
Okay,
no,
so here's a question. In that case, if you have a relationship and you know we're married and we've been together 13 years, it's not one of those things where oh it's dating and it's not working. You know, our lives are intertwined and
yeah,
it's a
totally.
thing. So if I detach from the expectations that he won't be able to apologize, he's incapable of validating me for whatever the reasons are, it isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
How do I approach a similar situation where I know that if I don't point it out and address it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse until we have a really big knockdown, drag out, breakup kind of a fight. Because when he starts being bitchy with me, it's because there's something he doesn't even realize is brewing under the surface.
Okay, what's the alternative to detaching from the expectation?
Well, I don't know what detaching from the expectation looks like, for one.
Okay, so let me explain that then. What that looks like is the recognition and acceptance that he can't or isn't doing what you're wanting him to do, and he can't or isn't trying to learn how. That seems like a
Yes,
reality.
I
Okay,
get that. I get
so
that.
you
But
can
what
hold
does
on.
that
So
look like in
I'm
conflict
trying.
or
Okay,
when something
hold
comes
on
up?
because I've been trying to tell you.
Oh,
So one is you can do, you have two choices, right? You can, if you're in a situation where someone truly isn't able slash willing to meet you where you want to be, you can continue having your nervous system expecting it and then getting dropped, expecting it and then getting dropped, expecting it and then getting dropped, and living in a perpetual state of anger. Or you can go through a grieving process. And the grieving process is, wow, this really sucks. I'm in a relationship, these things are going well, and maybe there's some compelling reasons to stay in it, even though, I'm not getting all of my needs met. But the reality is that I'm with someone who isn't willing to learn how to meet me emotionally and might not ever be able to learn that. And that's really
so
sad. And there's grieving around that. In a moment, what does it look like? In a moment when he isn't able to show up for you, you have a couple of options. One is you can get amped up and protest and try to get him to hear you and try to repeat the same thing that you've been doing over and over that's not really getting you that result you're looking for, which does take a toll on your nervous system and going into fight mode. And maybe he'll respond in that moment and maybe he won't. And maybe it'll end up in this huge fight, right? And that path is an option. That it's an option to continue down that. And you can assume that if he doesn't make a change by learning how to do that in a healthier way, and if you don't make a change and pull back from that, then you will keep going into that thing over and over and over again. So that's option one. Option two is to recognize in the moment he isn't going to show up for me in the way that I'm hoping for. He hasn't in the past. I have a lot of evidence to believe that no matter how much I fight him, no matter how much I protest, he is not going to all of a sudden go, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm gonna, and do this 5-minute repair that you're looking for." I don't think that any amount of protest you do, it's gonna get him to change his response just because it's
so you're still not giving me the clarity of option number two. I've already done the grieving, I've done the
okay.
acceptance, maybe there are more levels to do, but what does
Okay.
it actually look like? For example, he does something rude.
Okay.
I know that
Walk
if I do
away.
nothing,
Walk
well, listen,
away.
if I know that if I do nothing, it will continue to occur over the
Yeah.
course of the next week or two
Okay.
until it's not something that I can live with.
Okay. I don't think you have a lot of control. So you have to walk away. Don't fight. Stop trying to get something from him. This is my advice. You can keep doing the other thing if you'd like. Stop trying to get something from him that he can't give you. There is grieving to do in that moment. That is walking away, getting a journal, and going, this really sucks. I'm really powerless right now. If I keep fighting, this is going to happen. And I can go do that. Or I can just really sit with myself right now and deal with the feelings that come along with being in a situation that doesn't really seem like I can change. Because the
So
truth is,
not address it at all with him is what you're suggesting.
no, I'm giving you
Just
that as
address it with myself. He was
I'm
rude,
giving,
and
I,
I go and work on it myself and say, okay, this is bothering me around, I want to be respected. I need to let go of wanting to be respected. I can relax. He doesn't mean, it doesn't mean anything.
let's see,
It's just what
let's,
happened. I can calm
no,
down about it.
it does mean something. It means grieving. It's kind of like, your house burning down. Like it sucks. Your house burned down. That doesn't mean that you're overriding your feelings of your house burning down. You have to grieve. There's a huge loss there. But the truth is that you don't have control. Your house is burned down. So
Okay,
how would you grieve
so
that?
basically the option two, I think you're saying is the marriage is over. If you're talking about a house that's burned down,
I don't
then
know
you're
if the
saying
marriage is
either
over.
stay in it and fight or
I'll tell
recognize the
you,
marriage doesn't exist.
I'll tell you what I know. There's one thing I know. It doesn't sound to me like anything you're doing is getting him the response you're hoping for. And I can't give you another option for that. I don't have another option for giving him the response that you're hoping for. And I know beyond that, you have to decide what you're going to do. One, you can either accept the situation for what it is and stop fighting, or two, you can keep fighting. I have
All right.
I have no idea. Another option is to leave
So
the
in
relationship. I think
Okay,
that what
so
I'm
that's a third option. Okay, so in that second option, see, I really don't understand. Maybe because I am this fearful avoidant, that I think option two is the one where you're saying it's over, it's hopeless, leave. But you're saying that's option three. So I don't know
yeah.
what option two actually looks like as a fearful avoidant, maybe that when I can't address something that occurred really simply, straightforwardly, I don't even think it's going to be a big deal. Don't do that.
Well, you
Let's
can, but I don't know it's going to get you anywhere.
Well,
It
forget
doesn't
option
sound like
one. Let's just forget option one. Let's leave that off. We're talking only about option two here.
okay.
And as a fearful avoidant, to me, option two, I go straight to, well, that means I have to leave.
No.
So I don't know what option two actually
Option
looks
two
like.
is living in a situation with someone who is compromised, who can't. I mean, think about it like this: if your partner became a quadriplegic, right, and
Right, right,
we're in
right.
a wheelchair, what would you do? Well, I mean, there's no
If I
hope
was
that
frustrated
you're
that he
going,
couldn't walk up the stairs,
yes.
I would just have to get over it myself.
You'd have to, I don't know about get over it, but you'd have to accept it and you'd have to go, well, is the relationship worth it? Can we still have some things that we enjoy? Can I go wheel him around the park when we can't walk together? But is it worth staying or no, I can't do this. I need to be in a relationship with someone who can finish out life with me in a way that feels more fulfilling. I mean, what I do know is that there's no amount of yelling and protesting that's going to make him get out of the wheelchair and walk.
I get that.
Okay,
And,
I
and,
gotta
and
move
we may
on.
not be able to have this conversation go any further. I understand that because you have a cold that you're dealing with. I'll just say that I don't understand what option
Okay.
two looks like.
Well,
So
in the
we
book,
can leave it at that. And
you can look in the book in chapter, I don't know, when I say what is it, what if it's not working? That will explain very clearly option one, option two, and option three. In option, just think of option two as how I would respond if they physically couldn't do something. How would I respond? It's the same thing. He emotionally cannot do it, and he emotionally is not willing to get the work to do it. Apparently, I don't know for sure. Okay. I'm going to go over here to Eric. As an avoidant, and I got to stop here in about 2 minutes, everyone. As an avoidant, a place I often get stuck is the difference between my partner's experience of something, how it impacts her, and what my actual intent was. At times, I know I am thinking of her, and her experience is that I wasn't because the thing didn't land as I intended. Negative cycles happen. Is there a time for my intent to be heard? Yes, there is a time for your intent to be heard. You do not have to bury it. It's not really healthy to bury it. That this is that part where we're taking some turns. So I would, before you try to go into your intent, because what happens, hold on, what you're saying is like, look, she brings something up and then I start to go to, well, my intention, she felt dropped. My intention wasn't to drop her. My intention was actually to be responsive, and then your trigger takes over, right? Now we're not talking about whatever it was about her that felt unheard and unseen. We're now switching over to what about you felt unheard and unseen. It does matter that you felt unheard and unseen, but first we need to lean into her and say, okay, help me understand here. What about that? All right. So you felt dropped. I know I've felt dropped before. I know what it's like to feel unresponded to. It's a bad place. And, whatever my part was in that, I do apologize. And that is something like, let's work together here. So when you say something you feel more responded to, and I'm willing to work on that, what would help you feel okay? And just really lean in, stay with her there. And then, you know, you might even say right then, I've got, me, I've got my own stuff around what my intention was, but I'm going to put that to the side right now and really just kind of try to lean in. Then later, that's when you come in. And after you've sat with that and held her, that's when you come in and say, hey, listen, I really tried to show up for you and look at, what my part could have been. And in that, and I'm absolutely willing to work on that. But here's what's coming up for me. It does feel important to me that you're able to hear my intention and hear, what in that response was my hope in responding to you in a healthy way. And, you know, that's kind of a bigger issue because sometimes I don't know if, I'm feeling so appreciated for my good intentions. And it's not that I don't want to get better and help you, but there's also this part of me that for me to feel safe and close, I need to be seen for that, just like you need to be seen for your stuff. So it's not about burying it. It's about timing. Because if you go in when she brings up this concern and you start going into your intention, it things get convoluted and it's like whose needs matter most. And when partners can start doing that, usually that will help. Just those conversations and that structure will help with the symptoms. So maybe she's not maybe she's not getting triggered so much to begin with. Because we're building up safety and connection just in these conversations of really leaning in and hearing. Think about it. It's less about the content and more about the process. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop now because I have to run off. But I will see you guys next week for chapter 8. So, all right, bye everyone.